Hello, welcome. Come on in and get cozy because we're going on a journey today. So I started with just kind of like loosely sketching out my head shape here. We're looking kind of down on on her and not emotionally, just physically. We're looking down at her is probably how you would say that. But we're seeing a lot of the top of the head. Is what I will say to kind of prime you for these proportions, is that we're seeing a fair amount of the top of the head. I also was just wanting to try a bit of a different face shape than what I necessarily always do, which I say that like I always do one single thing. I experiment enough that it becomes a natural variation. So I was going for kind of sharper features, a longer face, long pointy nose, like more long vertically, but also with a fair amount of projection, and also tried and true. I was saying also a lot, but another kind of feature combo that I brought back here that I do like and do kind of use relatively commonly is the downturned eyes, but with like the arched kind of eyebrows that are sharply going up. Love that. There's just a lot of eyelid space, and it's appealing to me for whatever reason. So she has that, but also just kind of a really like sharp featured. Honestly, there was a point where I was like, she's pretty androgynous. Do I want to like lean into it? I wasn't entirely sold on her being a woman at like basically this stage. Especially, and that's part of why I ended up kind of struggling so much with the hair. You already saw a false start. I felt it looked too feminine for her. But then when I thought of kind of a more androgynous look, I also didn't like that. So I do kind of stick to this, which I did on a separate layer because I didn't have confidence I would like it. But I do end up keeping this hairstyle, which is just weird. In terms of objective, it is a lot more unusual in little subtle ways than the first attempt. But yeah, I do keep it, and I do kind of like it. And I did decide that this is a woman. But I was on the fence on that for quite a while, actually. So we're kind of exiting the sketching phase, and I hate to say it, but the sketching phase I feel was the most successful phase of this entire drawing. So I do a decent level of finishing with the render. I attempt to render. So this whole drawing, I don't know if I've said, I don't think I have, took about 3 hours, I think. Yeah, sounds correct to me. Yeah, it was 3 hours. Yes. I had to remember the file sizes I was working with. And yeah, the sketch really felt like it came together pretty effortlessly. And then, for context, last week was the first time I'd drawn digitally in 7 months, and I didn't do a render. I kind of did like a basic kind of colors and a little bit of shading, but I did not do a full kind of render of things as I would kind of understand it. And so I'm very out of practice, and I've kind of forgotten all the brushes I like to use. So I'm trying out ones I've never tried before. Also, I decided to do all of this base coloring on one layer. I use a couple different layers later, like I use a multiply layer and stuff, but I don't know why I did that. It would be easier if I didn't. It was a mistake. See, kind of like I'm overlapping the skin a little bit, and I will have to kind of put the skin back over instead of just erasing it. It's annoying. I don't know why I did this to myself. Around this phase in the drawing is when I really start regretting it, when I start trying to shade the hair. But it really gets worse when I start trying to shade the skin under the hair. I don't know why I waited to do that till after I did the hair. shading, that's also a mistake. It doesn't affect the final image, like, it doesn't make it look worse, but in terms of the process of doing that, oh boy, that was not a good call there. Um, I almost did the background details on the same layer. That would have been a nightmare. I do wise up. I do that on a layer below. Um, so again, working with a brush I've never worked before, which isn't one of the default brushes, and I wish I could tell you which one it was, but several years ago, I did just search free Procreate brushes and download a bunch of them, so I have no idea whom this is from. Um, but it's free. I didn't pay money for it. Um, and I feel like this brush is really better for like more of a kind of detailed painting style. It has a lot of nice texture, but that really like transformed the aura of my girl here. Because the sketch was, you know, one of the tensions of this whole drawing is the kind of conflict of, okay, how exaggerated do I want to be? Because the kind of head to shoulder, when I first did the initial just like loose rough in, felt very, cartoony. But then when I filled in her features, I went for more of a, I kind of pushed it into more of a semi-realistic style. And then it's kind of contrary to my, just to what I expected. As I just did the kind of worked with the render and everything, I found myself kind of pulling it more in a realistic way with like how I was shading things. Which isn't, semi-realistic can have realistic shading. It's fine, but yeah, there was this kind of tension, especially on the nose with, okay, how cartoony do I want it to be versus how kind of realized, because like her nose is very kind of sharp, and in the initial sketch it looked very flat, and that was kind of intentional. Like visually it had like a very straight bridge, didn't have a separated tip, didn't have kind of indication of a nostril, and those were like choices that work with that kind of flat cartoon style, which it wasn't very cartoony because just like the proportions, but it was sharp. And when you're kind of shading and adding the look of volume, it's all an illusion. The look of volume there, I did add a multiple layer. I think I mentioned that. I was going to do that. This moment is when it happens. But when you're shading, you're adding kind of the illusion of volume. You're pushing certain things to the back and pulling things forward. And so if you're doing a kind of minimal color with like a few shading areas, but you're not doing like a full kind of painted or like detailed kind of shading, things can be flat in a stylistic way, like on purpose. Purposefully, objects can look very like sharp and flat and detailed in that way. Whereas if you do kind of a semi-realistic paint over like I'm doing here, you kind of lose the ability to really have a very like sharp flat nose. Like the nostril becomes rounded compared to kind of the initial sketch. And here I am. Initially, I'm over the top on a new layer. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted explaining what I'm doing. And I'm using, this is a default brush. This is, I think, the acrylic brush in Procreate, the initial brush set. And then kind of using that to blend as well. I do actually later merge my layers after making copies because I was nervous. And do a full paint and do my paint over with everything on one layer because it just makes it easier to blend into existing things on the same layer. But yeah, what was I talking about? Oh no. Yeah, like as I'm kind of working here, you can see kind of I'm detailing the volume. Like you can see with the eye kind of where the brow bone comes out and things like that. And the nose becomes an issue. Like it becomes something you have to think about. Here I am doing all of I forgot how to make a group. I was like, I'm just gonna make a group and I'm gonna copy the group. It's gonna be great. I forgot how to do it. I didn't want to look it up. So I copied each one individually. It was a nightmare. Stunning display of competence, honestly. But like you can see with like the kind of brow bone and the kind of cheekbone that there's a lot more kind of the feeling of things coming forward once you start rendering like this. But then like you have to start making things make sense in three-dimensional space in a way that they do not when they're just a sketch. When it's just like a sketch with no volume and no shading and all that, you can get away with like suggesting things that don't make a lot of sense. Just like certain things, certain art kind of lends itself to its medium. I find, you know. So once I start kind of defining the volume of things to try and create this like physically real-ish look, then the quality of the nose changes a lot. And I don't think it's worse. I'm less sold on it than her pointy little nose. I do think I changed it a little bit after this. I might have already changed it. Yeah, I think I have. Just like she has a nostril now. I don't know how I feel about her having a nostril now. It's a change. But here I am kind of just filling in. I don't actually go over every single area with the kind of Flindy acrylic brush because I worked with a lot of different brushes to add texture, and if you go over everything with the same brush at the end, it undoes that. Like, it just gets rid of a lot of your work. I am going over a fair amount of it just to kind of make things make sense. I'm getting rid of the sketch in areas that I want it gone. And her robe, whatever, you know, I kind of minimally do. This is the going in, doing minor changes, and then zooming back out because I was, again, a little unhappy with her nose. Like, I feel like that the exaggerated proportions I gave her, because I went with, again, a very, I'm not sure if I've actually said this. I said again, like, I said it. Very kind of narrow features, very, like, exaggerated length of the face, very, like, long nose vertically, and kind of, I feel like that worked really well for the more stylized look of the sketch, and I'm not sure, as I added more kind of semi-realistic features, I'm not sure how well I like it. But I do keep it, and I don't think it's wrong. I just think it wasn't, it has a different quality than the sketch, and I really like the sketch. I feel like I'm just hung up on it. I think I'll like her more as time goes on. But also the eyelashes I'm doing now on a separate layer. Because I always do my eyelashes on a separate layer. It just makes them so much more easy to deal with. I'm actually using 2 different layers, so the entire paint over is 1 layer. I have copies that I have hidden that don't affect anything that are separate layers, but like all of this, it's 3 layers. One is the entire drawing, one is the top eyelashes, and one is the bottom eyelashes. Which is really fun. It shows my priorities. So here I am kind of being like, okay, do I want the nose to be that pointy with this style? And I do think about shifting things around, and I kind of do. I actually like move her chin a little far forward, because I felt like it was receded a little too much. There I'm doing that. I thought I already started it, but I had that, and then I kind of thicken up, kind of the line around her lower part of her face, just to kind of bring that more into perspective. And here we're coming up on the end here. I again started thinking about, like, do I want to move things? But I don't. I check it. It looks good. And here's the girly. Here she is. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.